Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? 大家好，因为我是在温哥华，温哥华时间现在是晚上有些朋友是在新加坡，有些朋友是在印度，有些朋友是在温哥华。So I have to speak in English because 一些新加坡的律师和孟买的律师，他们的第一语言是英文，他们的工作语言也是英文，他们的官方语言也是英文。但是呢，我有一个很好的助理，他是王成汉。尽管呢，我们的这门课也是最后一门课，我们会用中文，也会用英文，但是我还是要用英文解释，为了这些印度朋友、外国朋友在新加坡、在伦敦 and 在 Mumbai。Now, my name is Peter S.K. Ko. Peter Ko 是中文名是水顺光。这门课呢是我最后一门课。那我的助理今晚呢是王成汉。王成汉，这门课也是我们最后一门课。Now, we will talk about slide number 1. Global shipping crisis, implication for shippers and sellers.
全球航运危机对托运人和卖方的影响。
好 The contents under this will be 1. Supply chain disruption. Supply chain disruption 是很严重的事情。第二呢 it's the COVID-19 impact. Number 3, we have to deal with energy crisis and supply, especially right now with the Ukraine war going on and with the disruptions of energy and fuel to Western Europe. 不要忘记 Russia at any given time supplies more than 40% of European energy. Then we have to discuss the freight increase. The freight increase is a serious problem. Okay? You do not forget some of the expenses, shipment from one port to another port, the freight has gone up 10 times. 还有呢 we will discuss about the trade war problems. We will also discuss the marine cargo claims. And then we will then discuss 一些 action against the carrier.
供应链断裂、新冠疫情的影响、能源危机与供应短缺、运费增加10倍、贸易战问题、海运货物索赔对承运人提起的诉讼。
Now, this is the headlines news in the Financial Times. Financial Times, as you know, as well as my friends in Singapore and India and England, is a highly respected newspaper. 英国的金融时报, right? Now we have to talk about the situation, the headline news in the Financial Times.
英国金融时报头条新闻。
Now, I was very serious with this problem when I see vessels, ships rerouted from England back to a port in Europe because there was no workers going to download the goods from a container ships. And then at any given time, in Southern California, 在南非洲, you have as many as 85 container ships waiting to be discharged. Then, of course, we have to talk the latest to be the closures and restrictions in places like Shenzhen, like Hong Kong, as you know, that because of the COVID situations, factories right now have been closed in Shenzhen. And Shenzhen is a very important technological hub and very important as a part of the worldwide supply chain. 非常重要 in Shenzhen. And there's also a complete shutdown in Hong Kong. And then transportation from Shenzhen has also been suspended.
一大堆麻烦。由于英国交通阻塞，船只改道，在南加州有85艘船等待卸货。中国的关闭和限制。
Now, the supply chain disruption.
供应链断裂。
Now we have to talk about the factors. One, port congestions and discharge. That is very serious. Labor shortage. Why there is labor shortage? Workers are well paid. Some of them prefer to stay at home than to go to the ports to work. Now, delivery of raw materials and microchips. There is a serious problem in delivery of microchips. Now, all these things, especially for my friends in Vancouver, in Singapore, and in Mumbai, you know that all this will have tremendous impact on international trade. Additional supply chain disruption, the latest.
供应链断裂。
Now I have to talk about the situation, latest additional factors in 2022. One, warlike operations. This I refer to the present situations in Ukraine. Then the truckers' blockages, that I refer to the serious situation happened in Canada. And this actually affected something like about 25% of the supply chain between Canada and USA. And that is very serious. And lastly, I've talked about is domestic terrorism.
2022年的其他因素：战争和类似战争的活动，卡车司机堵路，国内恐怖主义。
Now, the latest, and this has been introduced as an additional slide, okay, is about war and warlike operation. I'm referring to war and warlike operations.
战争和类似战争的活动。
And then for my friends, I know there are a couple of friends from Japan that are listening to these presentations tonight, and that is why I have kanji, because they can also refer to kanji. Now, what is war? In legal definition, it includes war, revolution, insurrection, or civil strife. Also include capture, seizures, arrest, restraint, or detainment. Then all these are factors and they are accepted perils in marine insurance in ICC.
战争、革命、暴动或内乱、捕获、扣押、逮捕、限制或拘留，海上保险中的例外风险。
Now, this happens in Canada, and actually many days, right? there was truckers' blockages.
卡车司机堵路，
There was transportation disruption due to the recent blockages, especially between Canada and USA. Now, then we'll see what are the legal situations resulting from lockouts, labor disturbances, riots, or civil commotions. Must they be caused by any person due to political or ideological motive? Then, of course, we have to also discuss domestic terrorism.
近期交通堵塞导致交通中断，闭场、工潮、骚乱或民变，任何人出于某些政治或意识形态动机造成的。国内恐怖主义。
Now we talk about exclusion, delay.
除外危险、延误。
Let me explain to you. Loss or damage or expense approximately caused by delay, even though it is caused by an insurable risk. Insurable risk, let me give an example. Insurable risk 好像是风险 right? Then caused by peril of the sea. But the real cause is delay. Even if the delay was due to an insurable risk, the damage is still not recoverable, right? And it is very clear, insurer means 保险公司, they are not liable under the Marine Insurance Act and also the ICC in London.
延误造成的损失、损害或费用，包括由可保风险造成的。根据1906年海上保险法和协会货物条款，保险人不承担责任。
Now we talk about something that all of you know, COVID-19 crisis.
新冠疫情。
And that will have one, severe restrictions of movement. There will be impact on international business. There will be definitely effect on international trade when, because of the COVID-19, right, there has been severe disruptions in land transport and sea transport.
严格限制人员流动，对国际商务活动的影响，对国际贸易的影响。
So my friends, welcome to this lecture, and this is my last lecture on shipping crisis and supply chain disruption for 2022. Okay, now we talk about restriction and closures in Shenzhen.
深圳的限制和关闭。
Now this is an additional slide. Why do I use this? Because of the pandemic outbreak in Shenzhen, manufacturing plants and factories right now are being closed. And transportation between Shenzhen and Hong Kong right now is also suspended. And I also believe transportation between Shenzhen and mainland China has also been suspended. And Shenzhen, as you know, is a very important, very viable, and very successful high-tech center of China. And this would definitely cause further disruption to the supply chain.
由于深圳疫情爆发，制造厂和工厂关闭，深圳和香港之间的运输暂停，供应链进一步中断。
Now, labor shortage.
劳工短缺。
Do you know that more than 10.5 trillion US dollars have already been paid out by national governments, especially national governments in Europe and in North America. Now, with all these financial benefits, workers have the election to work or to stay at home. And this will definitely contribute to severe labor shortage because workers have preferred to stay at home with such nice paid up. And this will definitely have a severe effect on ports and logistics. Ports and logistics do need to have workers.
劳工短缺已花费10.5万亿美元，经济效益待在家里，严峻的劳工严重，港口与物流。
Now, the energy supply, energy crisis and supply.
能源危机与供应。
Now, energy here, I refer to LNG and bunker. Bunker is the fuel used in vessels, in ships, container ships. I'm talking about coal, electricity, and factory and manufacturing plants worldwide in Asia, in Europe, do require supply of energy. Now, we talk about the impact of the Ukraine crisis just on Europe. Do not forget one thing, because of the Ukraine crisis, right, there has been sanctions on electricity, gas, bunker, fuel from Russia. And this is a serious problem because many countries in Europe, they require more than 40% of such supply from Europe. Now, this will take time. Can there be substitutions from countries in UAE or from Saudi? This will also take time.
液化天然气和燃料库、煤和电、工厂与制造、乌克兰危机对欧洲的影响。
Now we talk about shipping freight.
航运运费。
Now, the cost of bunker, as I mentioned before, fuel, petrol, have gone up tremendously. And this will definitely have a severe impact on shipping and international trade. Now, for my friends in Mumbai, for any shipments from a port in India to Singapore or to Vancouver, you must realize that some places the cost of freight has gone up, not 2-3 times, has gone up to as much as tenfold.
煤仓成本、航运与国际贸易、运费10倍。
Now, trade war issues.
贸易战问题。
Trade war issues will further create a problem for supply chains, definitely, right? Especially rivalry between two large trading powers in the world, impositions of tariff that have not been removed, import-export restrictions, and that will definitely add up to the cost of goods, supplies of labor services, and this will, together with the revocations of licenses, they will present severe problems to the present shipping crisis as well as the present supply chain disruption.
两个大国之间的竞争，征收关税、进出口限制、吊销牌照。
Oh, just to let you know that the persons assisting me today also assisted me in previous seminar, and her name is called Wang Chen Han. In English is Wang Chen Han. She is very eloquent in both English as well as in Chinese. Now we talk about the contract of affreightment.
包运租船合同
Now, in any contract, okay, you need to have parties. And the shipping contract is called contracts of affreightment. The parties include ship owner or carrier or shipper. In any contract, you need to have considerations. And in shipping contract, that consideration is the payment of freight. And of course, there are international conventions governing the contract of affreightment. Here I'm referring to the Hague-Visby and the Hamburg rules, mainly the Hague-Visby rules.
当事人、船东或承运人或托运人对价支付运费，使用哈克维斯比或汉堡规则。
Now, in international trade, like in this case here, you have sellers and you have buyers.
买方和卖方
As I mentioned earlier, the carriers include the ship owners. Then to be, you have sellers and you have buyers. Then in international sales contracts, you have FOB and CIF. For those of you in marine underwriting and in shipping business, you know what is FOB and what is CIF, all right? And in CIF situation, the seller take care of shipment, port of loading to a named port of discharge and insurance. And the sellers are named shippers on the bills of lading. So remember, in contracts of affreightment, you have FOB or you have CIF sales contracts.
主要当事人、承运人、卖方和买方有 FOB 和 CIF 买卖合同。CIF 合同中，卖方承担装运照管的义务及装货港至指定卸货港和保险，卖方是提单上指定的托运人。
Yeah, just to let you know, I'm a Singaporean shipping lawyer based in Vancouver, all right? And being based in Vancouver, I do only shipping and Admiralty law work, whether it's Singapore law, English law, or Canadian law. I do shipping law, 就是 in Chinese is 海商法. Traditional use of ships.
船舶的传统使用
We must always realize one thing, that in shipment, you have bills of lading. And the bills of lading, the contract is actually contained and evident in a bills of lading document. Or when the ships is the subjects of a charter parties, then it will be contained in a charter parties. Now, ships can be a general ships or can be subjects to a charter party.
由提单包括或证明或包含在租船合同中，分为一般船舶或租船合同。
Now we must know the types of ships, right? Just to let you know, a ship is considered as in the feminine term, like she is a large container ship. We are going to download her. Is a she and a her. And this is also the same in Latin. In Latin words, a ship is referred to as a she. In English word, it's also a she. So ships, you have container ships. And what are the types of containers? There are two sizes. Then you have tankers, Yulun, for carriage of oils and chemical. Then you have bulk carrier for carriage of grains and mineral, and you have refrigerated vessel for shipments mainly of meat products. Then you have ro-ro ships for the carriage of vehicles, buses, lorries, car. So these are the types of ships.
船舶类型：集装箱船、集装箱种类、石油和化学品运输用油轮、谷物和矿物运输用散货船、冷藏船或混装船。
Now, as a shipping lawyer, and some of you are in the marine trade, a very important thing we have always to remember is a term called seaworthiness.
适航性
Now, what is seaworthiness? There is a definition in an English case that we use all the time. This case is McFadden versus Blue Star Line. The definition is, what is seaworthiness? Is the degree of fitness a prudent owner would require at the commencement of the voyage. Remember, the key word, commencement of the voyage.
谨慎的船东在航行开始时会要求达到适航的程度。
Now, seaworthiness also include cargo worthiness.
试货
Now we talk about cargo worthiness, okay? Now, what is cargo worthiness? Cargo worthiness, seaworthiness embraces, includes cargo worthiness, meaning that the equipment on the vessel, especially container ships, the storage facilities for general ships in the cargo holds or for storage, for cargo storage, all these equipment, storage facilities must be capable of embracing under this term cargo worthiness. And cargo worthiness is part of seaworthiness.
适航性包括货物适航性、货物配载设备和储存设备。
Then what is implied unseaworthiness?
暗示不适航。
Implied unseaworthiness actually include other factors. For example, insufficient and incompetent crew. And we have cases of nautical staff that are not properly trained, and some of them, they have their licenses. Actually, they purchase the licenses. You have also another situation, it's called inadequate fuel. Inadequate fuel meaning that the bunker, the petrol, the fuel for the vessel to carry the goods is insufficient, or there was a situation which I did years ago, the fuel was contaminated by seawater. Another thing is documentary non-compliance. Do not forget, when a vessel enters any port of discharge, you need to have valid, adequate documents. And documentary non-compliance is also part of implied unseaworthiness.
船员不足和不称职，燃料不足，文件不合规。
Now we talk about ship owners and the carrier.
船东和承运人。
Now, we always have to find out when we do work, we want to go against a particular ships. We have to find out who is the ship owner. And where can we check? We have to find out what is the meaning of ship owner. Is it the registered ship owner or the legal ship owner or people with beneficial ownerships? All these are definitions of a ship owner. And what is a carrier? A carrier under liner service? The ship owner is the carrier. Then how about when the ship is subject to a charter party? Then in that situation, the charterer may be the carrier in a charter party.
船东注册合法和实益的所有权。承运人，班轮服务，船东是承运人，租船人可以是租船合同中的。
Now we talk something called the carrier's accepted perils.
承运人的除外风。
Now we must see all the accepted perils. Where are they found? They contain as terms and conditions in a charter party, terms and conditions in the bills of lading, and they usually contain a list of accepted perils, meaning that damage or loss due to such peril, they will not be responsible as carrier, as ship owner. And that includes perils of the sea, like monsoons during the South China Sea in November to March. But now we have war, like the war in Ukraine. Quarantine restrictions due to COVID-19. Restraint of labor from whatever cause. And in today's term, restraint of labor can be due to COVID-19. Now, then how about the invasions of Ukraine by Russia? Would this be under the definition of war or warlike situation under the Hague-Visby rules?
租船合同或提单中包含一份除外风险清单，它们包括海上危险、战争、检疫限制、任何原因导致的禁止劳工，来自海牙维斯比规则第4条第2。
Then we have now a serious discussions on invasions of Ukraine, war.
乌克兰战争。
Now, the wording of exclusion clause in marine insurance and the definitions of war includes war, civil war, insurrection, and that is the same in the ICC or Institute Cargo Clauses in London. Now, the ICC war clauses cover the above risks plus damage or loss due to the relic mines, torpedoes and bombs. The relic mines were leftover mines, arising from a situation like Ukraine or in the Black Sea. Abandoned torpedoes, abandoned mines, abandoned bombs, all these are included in the definition of war exclusion, the war in the war exclusion clause.
海上保险中战争除外条款的措辞包括战争、内战、暴动，在协会货物条款中也是如此。协会货物条款涵盖上述风险，加上被弃用的地雷、鱼雷、炸弹造成的损害或损失。
Now, the invasions of Ukraine. How about damaged ships? I will do briefly some case studies.
入侵乌克兰， 船只受损案例研究。
In one case here that was reported in the Lloyd's Law report, a dredger was damaged by a derelict weapons of war. Now will be covered by the ICC war clauses cargo. That was a dredger that was damaged by an abandoned bomb. It could be abandoned years ago, but it is still recoverable. Then number two, there's another case called the North Star Shipping. In this case here, 一艘船, a vessel, was damaged due to detonation of explosive device. But in this case here, it's a little bit different because the court held that the ship owner, the 船东, was actually complicit in the bombing of the vessel, and insurers were entitled to avoid the war risk because the owner wanted to claim insurance for the loss of their vessel due to war risk. In this case, there was deliberate damage.
一艘挖泥船因被遗弃的战争武器而受损，现在将由 ICC 战争条款货物覆盖。一艘船只因爆炸装置爆炸而受损，法院认为船东是轰炸该船的同谋，保险公司有权避免战争风险。
Now we have to talk about the actual fault or privity of the carrier. Shipping lawyers will have always to establish that it must be due to the actual fault or privity of the carrier.
承运人实际过失或私
In other words here, the shipper is not responsible. The shipper can be the seller for loss or damage sustained by the carrier or the ship without any act, fault, or neglect on the part of their shipper. The shipper is therefore not responsible.
对于非因托运人的行为过失或疏忽所导致的，使承运人或船舶遭受的灭失或损害，托运人不承担责任。来自海牙维斯比规则第4条第3款。
Now we talk about carriage of goods in a general ships. General ships are actually non-container ships and are found in coastal trading.
货物运输杂货船。
Now, in a general ships, she has to carry the goods of any shipper. Shipper here refer to the sellers for that voyage, and usually from one coastal port to another coastal port. And the bills of lading is issued to the shipper. Now, once the bills of lading is issued, the bill of lading is endorsed. The contracts of freightment is between the carrier and the endorsee. Means that the bills of lading can be endorsed. And once it is endorsed, it is between the carrier and the endorsee. And this is unique to the contract of freightment in shipping. A bills of lading can be endorsed, just like a check.
必须为该航次运送任何托运人的货物，提单签发给托运人。一旦提单被背书，租船合同就为承运人和被背书人之间的。
Now, we have to talk about charter parties. Charter parties are important because the ships can be subject to charter parties. And for the purpose of this lecture, I will just talk about time and voyage charter parties. Time charter party is when the vessel is leased to another company for a specific time, can be 6 months, could be 1 year. Voyage charter party is between one port to another port. Like, for example, between the port in Ningbo going to London. That can be a subject of a voyage charter party. In the voyage charter party, here, the shippers are the charterers. The ship owners issues bills of ladings to the charterers, and they are named as shippers.
租船合同，定期和航次租船合同，托运人是租船人，船东向租船人也称托运人签发提单。
Now we talk about voyage charter parties and the CIF seller.
航次租船合同和 CIF 卖方。
Now, the voyage charter parties and CIF seller. In international trade, the charterer, also the CIF seller, has to use the ships to carry the goods to a port of discharge and deliver them to the buyer. This is part of international trade.
国际贸易，租船人也是 CIF 卖方，必须使用船舶将货物运至卸货港，并交付给买方。
How about liabilities of time charterers?
定期租船人的责任。
The time charterers have to bear liabilities from risks, dangers out of their control. Some factors are beyond their control. For example, delay, port congestions, adverse weather, fuel costs, especially the cost of bunker, has gone up in many instances as high as 10 times. Port congestions or delay, port congestions can be due to labor shortage, and the vessel, like anytime when I look out my window in Vancouver, I can see many container ships waiting to discharge their cargoes.
租船人必须承担因其无法控制的风险而产生的责任，例如延误、港口拥堵、恶劣天气、燃油成本等。
Now we have to talk about the main functions of bills of lading.
提单的主要功能。
Now, as I mentioned before, bills of ladings can be negotiable and can be endorsed to an interested buyer. Now, before the goods reach the port of discharge, this can happen after the goods are loaded on the ships and can take place anytime, can be endorsed to another party. A shipper gets a bill of lading when his goods are shipped on board by the carrier. The shipper gets a bill of lading, and once the goods are loaded on board the vessel,
可转让并可背书给感兴趣的买家。在货物到达卸货港之前，托运人的货物由承运人装船时即收到提单。
Now, types of bills of lading, transferable.
提单类型可转让。
Now, in the bills of lading, a bill of lading names the consignee. The consignee takes delivery of the goods, or he can endorse it to another party. A bill of lading can also be issued without naming a consignee, and it's up to the shipper to order the carrier to deliver the goods to a party named by him, and that can take place subsequent to the shipment. And this can take place anytime during the transit from one port to another port.
提单上注明收货人的姓名，收货人提货，或者他可以背书给另一方。提单也可以在不指定收货人的情况下签发，直至托运人命令承运人将货物交付给其指定的一方。
Now, charter parties and bills of lading. The charterer can also be the shipper. Between the ship owners and the charterer, when the ship is the subject of a charter party, the terms of the charter parties will override the terms of the bills of lading.
租船合同和提单，租船人也可以是托运人。在船东和租船人之间，租船合同条款将凌驾于提单之上。
Now we talk about insurable interest in marine cargo insurance, which is very important for China and for countries like India, like countries like Singapore, right? Because cargo insurance is part of marine insurance.
保险利益，货物保险。
The very important situation, there must be insurable interest before you can even claim under the cargo insurance. Now, what is this insurable interest? Insurable interest is interest in the goods, and the assured will benefit by the safety or prejudice by any loss or damage to the goods. So one thing is there's interest in the goods. There must be one party must receive benefit or must be prejudiced. So it either obtain benefit or prejudice by the safety of any loss, damage to the goods. And that includes the owners of the goods, and that includes the consignee. Remember, you need to have insurable interest in order to claim under a marine cargo insurance policy.
货物和被保险人的利益将因货物的安全而受益，或因货物的任何灭失或损坏而受到损坏，包括货物所有人和收货人。
Warehouse to warehouse clause.
仓库至仓库条款。
Now, this is an important clause now, and is found in most marine cargo insurance policy these days. Then understand the wording of this clause. Insurance begins when the goods leave the warehouse or storage named in the policy, and that warehouse can be 10 kilometers away from the port of loading to arrive at the buyer or the consignee warehouse. And again, the warehouse of the buyer or the consignee can be 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers away from the port of discharge. So this is the meaning of warehouse to warehouse clause. Effectiveness is from one warehouse of the seller to the next warehouse of the buyer.
保险自被保险货物离开保单中指定的仓库或储存地点生效，直至到达买方或收货人仓库。来自英国协会货物保险条款 ICC 2009。
Now, what are the criteria for marine cargo recovery?
海上货物回收标准。
What do you need to have? One, you need to establish what is the underlying cause of the loss or damage. Two, you need to establish fortuities or accident. I will explain what is fortuities arising from an English case later. Then you must also establish that the cause of the loss or damage is due to an insured peril.
需要确定灭失或损害的根本原因、偶然或意外因素、被保风险造成的灭失或损害的原因。
Now, this is from a case, and the English case is the British and Foreign Insurance, right? This is the highest judicial case. AC stands for the House of Lords, okay? Now, the definitions of elements of fortuities.
偶然事件
Now, the fortuities means the loss or damage arising from an external cause which is not expected to occur in a normal transit given the nature of the goods. In this case here, the goods were damaged by water during the transit from one port to another port. The marine insurance underwriters refused to pay, but they were not successful, and the court held that they still have to pay because that is not something that is due to certainty, right? And there is still an element of fortuities because water damage could arise anywhere and is unexpected. So remember this case when you have to establish the meaning of fortuities.
偶然或事故是指考虑到货物性质，由在正常运输中不会发生的外部原因造成的损失或损坏。
Now we cover this word called Subenleber. Subenleber is an old archaic English word, right? It's called Subenleber.
诉讼和劳工
Now let me explain to you what is Subenleber. One, like expenses incurred for minimizing losses or damage to the insured goods. Now, before you claim under the marine insurance policy, you have to take steps, action for the purpose of minimizing losses. For example, in a carriage goods by sea from one port to another port, the time bar is 1 year. Collision cases, 2 years. Normal commercial time bar situation, 6 years. But then you have to take issues a writ in a court, a national court, to preserve time bar. That kind of legal costs and expenses are definitely recoverable under sue and labor.
为减少被保险货物的灭失或损害而发生的费用，为保留诉讼时效而采取的措施，法律成本和费用是可收回的。
Now, I have to thank you for listening to my lecture. Okay, and this is my final lecture on shipping crisis and supply chains disruption. And if you have the times, you can also refer to the next slides, which will contain some of the situation for issues arising from shipping crisis, my 4 books. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, the major issues in shipping law is 1,200 pages. It's bilingual in English as well as in Chinese. Then you have carriage code by sea, right? And that will touch on the situations such as what is happening now. Marine insurance, of course, I will talk about insurable interest, fortuities. So these are the publications of mine. And unfortunately, all the books have been sold out long time ago. And I think major issues in shipping law, there might be a few copies left, and you have to contact the publisher directly, which is Sweet and Maxwell Thomson Reuters. Now, thank you so much for listening to me. And if there is time, we can have questions and answers session, maybe just one questions. Then after that, we will terminate this lecture. And once again, I thank Wang Chen Han for assisting me to read the Chinese words, and also and two other students for having me to do the translation. Wherever you are in Singapore, wherever you are in Mumbai or in Vancouver, and some of you I know are in China, I thank you so much for listening to this presentations. If there are written questions, you can always send them to Wang Chen Han, and she will send them to me, and I will be very happy to give you the written answers. With this, I think it is better to terminate my class. Why? Because it is quite late at night in Vancouver. It is, I know, it's afternoon time for you. For me, it is sleeping time now. Thank you so much, and have a nice day. Thank you so much. And Song Ji Wang, thank you for attending my class.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. It's quite nice to hear from you.
Yes, Song Ji Wang is a marine insurance shipping lawyer that I know for many years. So thank you so much, and have a nice day. For me, here it's quite late at night. Good night. Bye-bye.